So right now, what I have with me is Xiaomi's HyperOS 3, the latest operating system, and we finally get to test it out. But here's something interesting I want to show. This is Apple's dynamic island. So basically what you have is Spotify running on the dynamic island. So if I tap it, it'll open Spotify, or if I long press it, it'll show like a tiny little widget. The same for the tiny widget that's out here as well. And now this is Xiaomi's Hyper Island. So tap this to open a widget, tap this to open this widget, and you can swipe across to actually do these things as well. So Xiaomi's HyperOS 3, the more I used it, the more it felt like iOS than iOS itself. In fact, Xiaomi has like very deep integration with the Apple ecosystem now, and to Xiaomi's credit, it works surprisingly well. But beyond these two new features, the upgrades to HyperOS 3 feel threadbare compared to something like One UI 8 or OxygenOS 16 or even OriginOS 6 for that matter. So let's find out what you can expect from HyperOS 3 whether you own a Xiaomi or a Poco phone. Alright, if you're watching me for the first time, I'm Ashad, this is Trakin Tech English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Now, one thing that Xiaomi has wanted to do for years is a connected ecosystem, which it has managed to do very well with Xiaomi hardware itself. Now, it is actually expanding that beyond Xiaomi hardware, and you get fantastic ecosystem connectivity between a Xiaomi phone and Apple's devices like iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks. All you need to do is install the Xiaomi Interconnectivity app on your Apple device. And with that, you can drag and drop files between your Xiaomi phone and your Mac or even your iPad. You can actually mirror your phone's screen on an iPad. You can also use the Touch ID on your Mac to unlock a Xiaomi phone. We tried it out, it doesn't work all the time, but it's a lovely feature to have. You can even mirror your Xiaomi phone screen to a Mac. Honestly, all of this feels shockingly native. And yes, HyperOS 2 also did have interconnectivity features, but not as good as this. Now let's talk about animations and UI, and I really want to start off with Hyper Island because that is the most important change that most Xiaomi and Poco users are going to see with HyperOS 3. Because with Hyper Island, now instead of a single floating alert, you get multiple islands at the top of the screen, each showing a live activity or any ongoing task. Whatever you want, music, timers, deliveries and recordings, everything stays active together without interrupting what you're doing. Now, tapping an island opens a quick pop-up with the controls you need, and swiping between islands feels very fast and natural. In fact, I feel like Hyper Island's animations of swiping between tasks feel smoother than Dynamic Island as well. In fact, the charging animations also look modern, and you get better support for third-party apps as well, obviously. Now, apart from Hyper Island, there are some improvements to customization as well, one of which is the lock screen. There's now a unified personalization hub for both the home screen and the lock screen. The most important change is that there are a bunch of different clock styles, and you also can have a depth effect added to it, and they're easier to browse and install as well. Basically add to the lock screen as well. Earlier, you had to actually switch between themes to change the clock styles. Now it's available for you directly. Now with wallpapers, you can actually add video wallpapers. Not something new, but you also do get AI dynamic wallpapers with which you can create different creations of your own, and there are some really interesting things that you can do with it. Now with respect to icon design, if you have a Xiaomi phone, there's not too much of a difference in the style itself. But if you have a Poco phone, you will have noticed that it has actually moved from a circular icon to a square-kill one. A lot of the system app icon design has definitely changed. For example, the gallery, settings, compass, calculator, camera, all of it has changed in design slightly, not too much. Slight visual difference. Now coming to that famous, animation test that a lot of people like to do on the internet. Now, if you were to open like multiple apps back to back, it will be smoother with parallel animations on something like ColorOS or OxygenOS or even Realme UI for that matter. Now with HyperOS, you do get smooth animations, especially when you're opening and closing apps, and if you're using a very powerful device like we are, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. But if you open multiple apps back to back, you will notice a stutter after a while, which is not true for OxygenOS. It is slightly better refined. In fact, we also notice that if you're swiping between open apps by pulling the handlebar at the bottom, sometimes there's a bit of a stutter because it takes a second to sort of load the app from the cache. Otherwise, performance of the UI itself has definitely improved because the system feels faster with better memory allocation and lighter graphics load as well. In real use, we notice that micro lags have been reduced quite a bit coming from HyperOS 2, and if that translates to lower end or mid-range devices, that'll be awesome. Now, another new visual change is that there is a new search bar that you can add to your home screen. It's called Home Screen Search. It is a global search where you can look up apps, images, files, and more across your system, and even get suggested Google search terms at the bottom. It's not the most intuitive implementation because you have to move the keyboard down to just take a look at all the search suggestions, but it's there, it's useful. There are also a new set of fingerprint animations that kind of look cool. The old set, of course, continues to exist, so you get like a really large pool. But one thing I felt like Xiaomi could have done better is with the changes to the control center. Because even now you can't change the size of the quick settings or move it across the board as you wish. So that I felt is definitely lacking compared to a lot of other operating systems out there. Also, one thing we notice is that active toggles turn pure white, and which can look harsh, especially if you have a very bright display. It can like sort of pop into your eyes. We prefer the bluer active toggle of the HyperOS 2 implementation. The battery icon now resembles iOS with a pill-shaped and cutout percentage, and the other icons like Wi-Fi and SIM, all of them also do look like iOS, by the way. There is a lot of iOS inspiration if you've noticed throughout the operating system. Widgets are still the weak spot. The panel remains cluttered, and some widgets behave like ads or open websites. HyperOS 2 also had this problem, and this is one area that Xiaomi definitely needs to fix with at least HyperOS 4, if not HyperOS 3.5. Now here's the thing, HyperOS 3 is currently rolling out to a lot of devices. The official update has come out to Xiaomi 15 Ultra, but I'll show you the timeline for the other devices. However, I know for a fact that Xiaomi hasn't been the best with updates, and while everyone has given out their update on time, Xiaomi's HyperOS is taking its own sweet time to come to people. So yeah, so keep that in mind as well. And overall, if you look at it, HyperOS 3 is not really a huge upgrade over HyperOS 2. Yes, Hyper Island is new and it is interesting, and the interconnectivity features have definitely improved. But beyond that, there are some things that I expected with respect to change in design, visual identity, some things better. And unfortunately, that's not really happening right now with HyperOS 3. What I feel personally is that if the industry has taken 2 steps forward this year with respect to OS and UI upgrades, Xiaomi has taken 1 step forward. It's a step forward nonetheless, but yeah, I expect it slightly better. What do you guys think of HyperOS 3? Are you excited for it on your Xiaomi or Poco device? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.